Well, welcome back to Ethical Adulthood. This is Season 3, Episode 11, where we look at the Bhagavad Gita. Before we begin, I want to say three things. First, most people listening to this podcast might not know what the Bhagavad Gita actually is. It's not a freestanding book in the way we ordinarily understand a book. It's a small section of the Mahabharata, one of the great epics of ancient India, a vast story of kinship and power, succession and betrayal, duty and war. Now, the Mahabharata brings two branches of the same royal family to the edge of a catastrophic battle. The Bhagavad Gita begins at the moment the warrior Arjuna asks his charioteer, Krishna, to drive him between the two armies so he can see whom he is about to fight. And then he recognizes everyone. He sees their faces. On the opposite side were his grandfather, his archery teacher, his elders, his friends and cousins. Seeing their expressions, their armor, their readiness to die, made the horror visceral in a way no negotiation table ever had. He lays down his bow and he collapses. The conversation that follows between his charioteer, Krishna, and Arjuna is the Bhagavad Gita. That's the first thing I wanted to tell you, so you have some ground to stand on. Second, the translation I'm using is by Eknath Eswaran, because his was my gateway into the epic poem. It's not generally considered to be the most scholarly and certainly not the most philologically exact English translation of the Gita. Eswaran is doing something more interpretive than a faithful scribe would. He's treating the battlefield as an allegory for internal struggle. This is a battle inside human consciousness. Secondly, the characters in this interpretation are like avatars for certain egoic tendencies like greed, anger, and attachment. And further, he strips away the dense Sanskrit and he substitutes accessible psychological terms. He also prioritizes conveying the spirit of the passage rather than a literal word-for-word translation. So, a philologist would say he's doing way too much smoothing out. But Eswaran was fundamentally a teacher of meditation and daily living. Plus, he was a professor of English literature. So his aim was to make this ancient text accessible to the modern reader. And he is handing it to us as a map of human consciousness and a guide for living. So this is what allowed me to enter it. I read it in 3 sittings over 2 days. That's a small miracle for me. I've reread it 4 times since then. So I will be talking about the Bhagavad Gita, but I also want to be transparent. I encountered it through the doorway Eswaran built. Every translation is also an interpretation, and every translator illuminates some features of the terrain and leaves others in shadow. Third, and I want to say this very plainly, please do not finish this episode believing that you now understand the Bhagavad Gita. Unlike some of the other episodes, perhaps on the Great Chain of Being or the Seven Deadly Sins, this map cannot be adequately summarized for you. I can explain its structure. I can tell you what I see in it. I can hold it up to the light and turn it around so that we can examine some of its surfaces together. But the Gita, it requires a bit more of us. Its chapters don't merely present a system that can be outlined and understood from a distance. They return repeatedly to subjects like how to act, who we are, what it means to be disciplined, what does devotion require of us, what is death, how does duty affect our actions, what good is knowledge, surrender, and what's the nature of reality. Its meanings accumulate. Its teachings complement and complicate one another. You have to remain with it. So if you genuinely want to know this terrain, you're going to have to read the text yourself. You'll have to apply yourself a little bit here. And I don't say that lightly. And looking at the remaining maps in this series, I probably won't say it again. So let me take you on a tour of the book. We begin, as I said, on a battlefield where the battle has not yet started. Two armies facing each other across a no man's land, an open ground. Arjuna, who's a great archer, asks his charioteer, who happens to be Krishna, or the Supreme Being, though no one has said it yet. He asks Krishna to drive him out between the two armies. He wants to see the faces of those he's about to kill. And what he sees undoes him. Not enemies, cousins and childhood playmates. His teachers. The grandfather that bounced him on his knee. And men who taught him how to hold a bow, now holding bows against him. His body fails first. Trembling, dry mouth, the bow slips from his hand. Then the mind follows. He asks, what good is a kingdom bought with the blood of my own family? He sinks down into the chariot and he says, I will not fight. This is where the poem actually begins, not with wisdom, with collapse. And Krishna's answer, it doesn't come as comfort. It comes as reorientation. Krishna says, you grieve for what shouldn't be grieved. The wise grieve for neither the living nor the dead. Something in us was never born, and so will never die. What you are calling yourself is actually just the garment. The body is the garment. It wears out and it's exchanged. But the deepest self was never born and cannot die. Garments wear out. You do not. From this perspective, that's all death is. From there, the ground shifts, chapter by chapter. It's not a straight road. It's more like circling a mountain to view it from different angles. There's the teaching on action without attachment to its fruits. Do the work and release the outcome. Krishna says it's being consumed with the outcomes that enslaves us, not the doing itself. And then there's the widening of what counts as a yogi. I mean, the renunciate, yes, but also the one who acts in the world through various ways, but without being stained by it. And there's meditation, laid out almost like instruction, posture, gaze, the mind returning again and again to one point, the way you gentle a restless horse home. There's devotion, or bhakti yoga, as a way of entering the divine as its own path, and it's not lesser than the knowledge path or the discipline path. There's the teaching that splits the field of awareness from the knower and from the field. This is quantum mechanics from 3,000 years ago. He says this body, this life, this circumstance is not finally who we are. In Eswaran's presentation, these become several doors into an integrated spiritual life. And then, right at the edge, Krishna begins to speak of his own, and I'll use a Sanskrit word here, vibhuti, his divine splendors. He says, I am the beginning, the middle, and end of beings. Sound familiar? Among mountains, I am Meru. Among rivers, I am the Ganga. Among light sources, I am the sun. Among weapons, I am the fire, the thunderbolt. He's listing manifestations. He's hinting at his scale, circling something enormous. And Arjuna, hearing this and not quite understanding, this is his charioteer after all, asks to see it directly. And I'm going to stop here because I don't want to reveal the rest. But suffice it to say that Arjuna does regain his composure. He is fundamentally transformed, and he is ready to face his duty with zero hesitation. Amazing. Okay, now that you see the basic terrain of the map, let's look at what this map is trying to solve. Well, what if I said it's trying to solve all of ethical adulthood in one fell swoop? I'm going to take us through the capacities. The first capacity of tolerating discomfort, Arjuna experiences almost unbearable discomfort. He must avoid all of the pitfalls of trying to tolerate discomfort: collapse, bitterness, hardening, exporting his pain, and finally, permanent retreat. And let us say this as well, because it's really important. His collapse, it contains the body's intelligence. His body registers the enormity of the moral conflict before he can reason his way through it. But his collapse cannot be allowed to become his home. Sometimes the feeling of being unable to act, it doesn't mean the action is wrong. It means that perhaps we have finally understood exactly what the action will cost us. The second capacity, rupture and repair, well, this is rupture beyond repair. Let me be clear. Arjuna will participate in the killing of people he admires, trusts, and loves. No conversation can restore what is about to be broken. No apology can return the dead to life. So this takes rupture and repair to its outer limit, where ordinary repair is no longer possible. And ethical adulthood does not promise that every rupture can be repaired. Sometimes in our lives, the task is not restoration anyway. It's bearing irreversible consequences without abandoning ourselves or others that we have vowed to protect. Power. Arjuna is not the only actor here, and he's not entirely a free agent. His older brother leads their cause. 2 enormous armies have already gathered. Years of grievance and failed negotiation and failed diplomacy, humiliation and obligation are part of this story. He is a warrior. He has a duty. He also has a conscience. This imbalance between personal agency and inherited circumstances is real. And the imbalance changes not only the meaning of his choices, but the effect it will have upon an entire civilization. Grief. Arjuna's grief is hardly casual. It's immediate, first of all. It's felt in the body and in the mind. It is morally fraught. It's not going away with time and therapy. And it is inconveniently timed to coincide with the battle of his life, which stands before him. There's no protected retreat in which to metabolize it. But the Gita doesn't ask Arjuna to become unfeeling. Rather, it asks whether grief can be fully present without becoming the only author of his action. This is a key point, and it's an uncommon one as well. Finally, the poem begins with the collapse of certainty, guarantees, and here's the part that I don't talk about a whole lot, but it's so there all the time. It begins with the collapse of innocence. Arjuna has lost all the components of a clean choice. When he begins the conversation with Krishna, he has no certainty that the fighting is righteous. He has no guarantee of victory. He has no guarantee of honor. He has no guarantee of survival. He has no guarantee history will vindicate him. And he has lost the possibility of remaining innocent. He knows exactly what he has to do. And he has contemplated the costs, the consequences. So at the beginning of the Gita, Arjuna cannot see an ethically clean path forward. Krishna will spend the rest of the poem giving him a framework within which he can act. And by the end, Arjuna will say that his confusion has been dispelled. But it's important to notice what has happened. The uncertainty has not been resolved through more evidence or a prediction or a guarantee that no harm will come. No. It's been resolved inside Krishna's metaphysical account of reality, an account in which Arjuna has come to trust. And that distinction is going to matter later when we talk about the drawbacks of falling in love with this map. For now, Arjuna has lost the fantasy that there is an easily identifiable, painless, innocent path forward. And yet, he must choose. And that's the fifth capacity in its most severe form. So before we move on to the questions we have been asking of every map, and asking, is it useful? Let's look at the paths, or the disciplines, or the yogas that transform human consciousness. So in no particular order, the first one is karma yoga, or the yoga of action. We act without attachment to the results. We have the right to our labor, but not to the fruits of our labor. Karma yoga teaches that you should perform your duties with total dedication, but offer up the results to the greater good, without letting success or failure disturb your mental peace. Work itself becomes an act of worship. Then there's jnana yoga, or the yoga of knowledge. Learn to distinguish the temporary self, which is the body-mind, from the eternal self, which is referred to as Atman. You are not your physical body. You are the unchanging, immortal consciousness witnessing them. The root of suffering in this jnana yoga path is ignorance, which comes from, that root word for us is ignoring reality. Ignorance makes us confuse our true nature with the fleeting physical world. Through intellectual inquiry, study, and self-analysis, or self-inquiry, as we might call it this century, one pierces through the illusion of dualities to recognize that the inner soul is identical to cosmic reality, known as Brahman. The third path, Raja Yoga, or the yoga requiring discipline, also known, we'll say meditation, will be a translation for Raja. So here we are mastering the mind through quiet, disciplined, inward focus. The mind is like a wild horse or a flickering lamp. When it's stilled, it reflects the true self. Practical instructions for meditation are given here, which lead to samadhi, or deep meditative absorbed stillness, unification with all that is. And the fourth yoga, bhakti yoga, devotion. Here we surrender the ego through complete loving devotion to the divine. Love is described as the easiest and most direct path to transcendence that's available to every human being. While jnana yoga relies on a sharp intellect, Raja Yoga on intense willpower, bhakti works through the heart. By channeling all emotions here, love, longing, gratitude, trust, toward Krishna, or the Supreme Being, the devotee's personal ego melts away. Krishna promises that anyone who thinks of him with unswerving love is instantly liberated. The last path, renunciation or sannyasa. True renunciation is an internal state of detachment. It's not about fleeing into a forest or a cotton candy cave, as I've called it. Renouncing action itself isn't possible, but renouncing desire within action is. That's true liberation. In ancient times, renunciation meant giving up a householder life, shaving one's head and going off to live in a forest or on a mountain. Krishna redefines this completely. A true renunciate is simply someone who works without selfish desire, hatred, or attachment to personal outcomes, even while living squarely in the middle of society, or in this case, on a battlefield. Eswaran is asserting that a complete life uses all 5 of these paths. Hands dedicated to selfless action, mind disciplined by meditation, head guided by knowledge, heart filled with devotion, and spirit anchored in an internal renunciation. Okay, that's the map's terrain. Now let's look at where this map shines. First, the Gita has endured because its teachings on action and attachment, selfhood, discipline, and devotion have proven extraordinarily powerful across traditions and centuries. Second, the map takes Arjuna's collapse seriously. This is important. Arjuna's body is not a nuisance or a thing to be denied or simply strengthened in some way or numbed. Long before we had modern language for nervous system overwhelm, the poem understood that a moral crisis can seize the body. In fact, it's his collapse that initiates the teachings in the first place. I mean, had he not collapsed and had he just gone into battle, the entire 700-verse poem wouldn't exist. So without that collapse, the teachings don't get written. They don't get metabolized. And they don't get passed down. So the terrain doesn't miss. The mountain that must be surrendered to before it can be climbed. The Gita does not begin with an unbelievable story or an abstraction of some kind. It begins with an incapacity. I find this fascinating. But as I said earlier, you can lie down and cry. You can find a cotton candy cave and retreat there. You can absent yourself for a time, but you can't build a permanent home there. Next, the map separates responsibility for what we do from what happens because we do it. This is a difficult lesson to learn. It's squarely in the realm of when we are feeling the pressures of the ego. So this is one of the Gita's greatest gifts. It says you're responsible for the integrity of your action. You're not, however, sovereign over reality's response. The gift of non-attachment releases us from the idea that if we don't get our way, we have failed. That if we don't get the outcome we intended, we should not have done what we did. That's not the truth. The truth is what reality is. I often refer to what many people use the term God for. I refer to that as reality. There may or may not be a God in the way people think of it. But reality, that's something we all share. The reality of what is actually unfolding in front of you. That's direct contact with God, in my language. And you're not responsible from the entire response from reality. Now let me clarify what is meant by non-attachment. It's not indifference. It's not carelessness. It's not emotional withdrawal. It's the relinquishment of the fantasy that we can control the universe. It's also the relinquishment of the claim that this act I am about to do belongs to me, exists for me, and must establish something about me. We act wholeheartedly and we surrender the following demands: that goodness guarantees success, that reality meet our preferences, and that we are going to be found to be correct in the end. And next, I love that this map offers more than one path in life. This is the gift of diversity, equity, and inclusion before we coined the phrase. The Gita recognizes multiple spiritual temperaments. Karma yoga, action as the way. Jnana yoga, knowledge as the way. Bhakti yoga, devotion as the way. Raja, meditation as the way. Some of us understand by serving, some of us by knowledge and understanding, some by loving, and some by engaging in the mental absorption offered in meditation. The paths overlap and correct one another. It's the gift of broad multiplicity. And last, the map doesn't relieve Arjuna of having to be Arjuna. This is the knife of non-duality. He may not be alone, but he must act from his own singular position. Krishna accompanies Arjuna all the way to the threshold of action, but he cannot take Arjuna's place. Guidance is available, love is available, teaching is available. And in Arjuna's case, cosmic revelation is available. But the actions we take in our lives are not give-upable to the bosom of the guru, or to service, or to knowledge, or to understanding, or even to the ultimate realization of oneness. The Gita does not rescue Arjuna from the burden of being an individual. Instead, it teaches him how to bear it. No one can stand for Arjuna in Arjuna's place. For a non-dualist, whatever question you have, the answer is almost always both. At the deepest level, we are unified. At the lived level, the arrow leaves your bow. So, those are its gifts. What did I learn from the Bhagavad Gita? Well, in the final analysis, I took this away. You have to show up. You have to know the territory. You have to gather yourself together, and you have to move. What do I mean by show up? We have to stop hiding, stop explaining, stop fantasizing we're somewhere else, and stop catastrophizing at some point. We show up by standing up and facing reality. What do I mean by know the territory? See the terrain, the people, the history, the powers, the costs and the consequences, the loyalties. What do I mean by gather yourself together? Go inward, gather your capacities, gather your resources, gather your courage, your guidance, your loves, your talents, and your intestinal fortitude. Gather everything you have to make your entrance through the doorway of the next right thing to do. Do not allow grief, fear, and the relentless march of time to become powerful enough that they make the decision for you. And finally, move. Not because we're now certain, but because moving is ours to do. And because refusing to move changes the world just as well as moving. Krishna has argued, revealed, instructed, and repeatedly pressed Arjuna toward action. But near the end, after giving him the full teaching, he returns the active choice to him. Reflect on this completely and then act as you choose. This is crucial. Arjuna's freedom is not freedom from conditions. It's freedom within conditions. He can't choose the history, the battlefield, the opposing army, a painless outcome. He can choose whether to act consciously, which is all any of us can do. And while this would be a great place to end this podcast, we haven't done our due diligence. We need to use discernment with any map. And that's what I hope that we're learning to do here in this season. Read maps, see their gifts, see where they falter, and carry them with wisdom, not blind love or total rejection. So let's look at where the pitfalls may be in this terrain. The biggest issue is this. Arjuna is actually talking to God, the supreme being. Okay? This map is powerful explicitly because Krishna is God. Krishna knows the nature of reality, the true self, the meaning of death, the cosmic order, Arjuna's duty, and Krishna, as God within this story, claims knowledge of the cosmic outcome that Arjuna does not possess. Krishna has already seen eternity because he is eternity. He is outside space and time. So yeah, he's God, as I said. In our lives, we get not so much. Our charioteer, or the person telling us to pick up our bow, may be a leader, a parent, a guru, a religious institution, a political movement, an inherited role, or even in that lens of IFS, a frightened part of ourselves. None have the cosmic view. And crucially, we ourselves don't have it either. So that's the first place we need to use discernment. Next, there's this concept of dharma. It can disguise our conditioning or our culture's truths as our truth. The Gita says Arjuna is a warrior and therefore must fulfill his dharma. Don't know what dharma is? If you want to Google it, it's spelled Dharma. It is a notoriously dense word. It can mean duty or right action. It can mean the moral and cosmic order and the obligations that are attached to one's particular nature and position. In the language I naturally use, it points towards staying in rhythm with the truth of life's unfolding. But that's already an interpretation. And that's fine for folks who are so close to God that they can hear the rhythm of the natural order of the universe and like see their sheet music before them as they participate in the cosmic concert that is existence. Oh, those kinds of people are truly blessed. But in most of our lives, we've got questions. Who assigned us the role that we inhabit? And who exactly benefits from our sacrifice and our obedience? Is the role itself ethical? And is inherited duty the same as truth? So the key question here is this: what happens when ethical adulthood requires that we betray the role assigned to us? If that's required, the Gita does not offer the terrain. So the spiritual teaching in the Gita is this: surrender your ego, which claims that you have the right to demand to control reality, right? Surrender your egoic claims and your identification with your personal story to truth. Well, institutions and cultures and families can distort that and turn it into this. Surrender your personal judgment to the person claiming to represent truth. This is where sacred texts become dangerous in the hands of those who have power. The guru, the state, the king, the elder, the authority. So the gift of non-attachment is lovely. Release your claim on the outcome. Well, the distortion can manifest in less lovely ways. The distortion can say, stop caring what happens. Don't grieve the damage. Do not examine the consequences first. Never admit you were wrong. Ethical adulthood says no to all of that and wants to make this correction. I cannot control the consequences, but I must remain available to learn from them. So the Gita teaches that the deepest self, or Atman, cannot die. Maybe. But even if we know this is true somehow, bodies still die and do not return. Children still lose parents, and parents still lose children. And violence, righteous or not, still injures history. Now, the absolute does not cancel the relative. No one truly dies can be metaphysically meaningful. It's something like when we say, well, they're in a better place, or they're at peace now and no longer suffering 10 minutes after someone has transitioned. This can land as ethically grotesque when it's used to trivialize or flatten suffering. So let's look at the battlefield. Every side imagines itself righteous. Every leader can go and find a Krishna substitute willing to explain why violence is necessary. And the Gita is powerful once within the story, the battle is understood to be unavoidable. But the Gita doesn't help us to reliably determine whether a battle is unavoidable in the first place. So the Gita can make its interpretation of reality feel like reality itself. And this is something that's come up before, I'm sure. When the map really seems to match the terrain you're standing in, that's reality. The map is no longer the interpretation. The map is reality. So once you accept, in the Bhagavad Gita, once you accept its metaphysics, its account of death as transformation, its idea of duty as recognizable, and of course its divine narrator, the answer becomes obvious. But our lives don't come with clear roles, clear belief systems, and a proven Krishna sitting beside us. The gift of the Gita is that Krishna teaches Arjuna how to act. Where that gift can become distorted begins when we assume that our situation is like Arjuna's situation, or someone in our own story is Krishna. So, read the Bhagavad Gita if this map sounds intriguing. Take the lessons from the map. They're great, really, with a capital G. And do not take the map as reality, because it's not your reality. That's become a through line with all maps, hasn't it? We come to the end. Listeners might ask, what was your point? All right, here's the point. We show up. We get to know the territory. We gather ourselves together and we move. Not because we're certain, not because we're guaranteed success, not because we're innocent. Because this is our life. And no one else can finally live it for us. This has been Ethical Adulthood with the Bhagavad Gita. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.